So some of you will know that we already did a brake booster on this car, and you might actually be wondering, why didn't you just leave the brake booster off and keep this out of the way while doing this conversion? Well, a couple reasons for that is, if you're going to be doing this conversion, that brake booster is going to be in the way, so that makes it more in line with you at home doing it. Plus, I wanted to get the booster and master cylinder in place so I could bleed the brakes, so that once I get the exhaust off of this thing, it can be moved away from my lift here instead of being stuck on the lift, because I got another car waiting to get on it. So you pretty much want to start with getting the air cleaner out of the way. Now, I didn't put it back on because why put it on and take it back off? It's a 13 millimeter, pretty much the only metric bolts on the whole car. And when you take it off, you can remember that there are two return springs, or at least there should be, hooked to two holes here off of the throttle mechanism there on the side of the carb. Now this one is missing the crab claw. It should be up here, but that just makes it a little bit easier to get it off there. Once you get that off of there, then I would just go ahead and drain the coolant, because you're going to have to get the heater hoses disconnected at some point here, and you might as well go ahead and get that draining, because it can take a little while. And what I like to do is I like to use these yellow pans for coolant, and I use black for oil. And at this point, I would highly suggest getting in here with some kind of penetrating oil and hitting these before you start working on anything else, to give it some time to soak in. Now at this point, you probably want to just start jumping in there and just getting that carburetor off of there first. But I say, let's actually look at the exhaust system first. So while this connection's a lot easier to actually get in there and access with all this out, with the carburetor and everything out of the way, I also want to show you another option here that in some cases, this one's probably going to hold to that case. And one of the reasons why I say it could take a little while to drain the coolant is, one of the ways I like to do it is to get the clamp loose here, and you can slide a screwdriver up in there, just break that seal, and then the coolant will run down the screwdriver and into the pan instead of going all over the place. And if you let it, give it a little time, you won't make nearly as big of a mess. So if you're going to reuse the rest of the system like we are in this case, because this is an ANSA system that's still in pretty good condition, he wants to retain it. And in a case like this, where the clamp, which I've already taken off, wasn't really clamped too tight, so there's not big indentions in the pipe here, we have a good chance of being able to get this separated here on the car, which would be a lot easier than trying to wrestle with it on the floor. What we got to do is just take the hangers loose, and I can twist this. And if it twists a little bit, then I can twist it and pull it off while this is still connected to the car and you have the leverage. So we'll see if this works like I think it will. You can get this down here, and if you can get this thing to twist at all, that's why I say, if you leave it hooked up like that, it's possible to get this off a whole lot easier than wrestling it on the ground. Now we can also show you what to do if that won't work and you have to take it off the manifold first. So if this is clamped tight enough to have enough of a dimple in the side here to where you can't get that pipe out, and you have to take it off at the front first, and then you're trying to figure out how to get that off because you want to reuse the rest of it, you can cut it off right here, just in front of the pipe. And then you get in here with a chisel and a hammer, and get in there, get a hold of the inside pipe, and drive that in with a hammer so that it folds in on itself, and then you'll be able to get it out of there. And then from there, you can work this over a piece of pipe to get that out of it so that the new piece of pipe will slide in. Before you go to the top side, whatever is existing on your particular car, connecting the pipe to the bracket here, you should get that loose now. So I'll go ahead and get this apart which actually, that isn't even holding anything. All right, no big deal. Hoses like these and radiator hoses and heater hoses and vent lines and all that stuff can become stuck, especially when they're dealing with heating and cooling cycles. So one of the ways you can take them off is you can literally just take a pair of pliers, get a hold of them here and twist them, get it to twist, and then from there you should be able to pull it off. The other way you can do it is you can get something like this. This is like Harbor Freight or something like that, and you can get in there and slide that in there, and what that does, that'll break that loose, and you can kind of work it around and get it to come loose, and then it'll pop off just like that. So once everything's disconnected, now we can take the carburetor off, which is going to be a 1/2-inch wrench and a few minutes of time, because you can't really swing a wrench here that far on them. Can we get this thing loose? Kind of turn it sideways a little bit here and get the cable to come loose, because you got to line up the slot there with the cable to get it to pop out. And we can get this stuff off of here. This is the intake preheater. And this, and then we'll take a wrench, and this should be actually a 7/16, which I don't have right here. Take this loose. All right, it's not 7/16 because it's an aftermarket. So in this case, it's a 10 millimeter because it has been replaced at some point. Could be either or, depending on when the cable was made. Just like with brake stuff, you never know what size the wrench it's going to be until you get into it. Now we have access to get to these bolts here. These can be a struggle to get out. Preference here would be to get a 6-point onto them, because depending on how much rust is on there and what's been done in the past, 12-point sockets don't usually work too well, but a lot of times your deep well sockets aren't 6-point. And this may or may not want to come loose without using a little bit of heat, depending on just how long they've been on there. Now you can also just crank until they break if you want. That's your prerogative. That's not how I like to do things. So I will probably get in there and put a little heat to these. Now I have two different torches. One is this style, which can be really hard to get up in there very well. And the other is this style. And this one just happens to have mat gas on it, which will heat it faster anyway. Sometimes they will come loose without getting them so hot that you get color in them, but a lot of times you gotta heat them until you get some color in it. When you see some red, then they'll start coming loose, but they also might just snap a little easier. Just like that. So once you get these three broken loose, or more likely broken off, you just knock that pipe out of the way. Sometimes it'll be stuck in here and doesn't want to pop out. You can just come in with a screwdriver, just get it to move a little bit, and it should drop right off. Drop it out from underneath the car. Then we can come in here, get all these loose. You're going to have to take a wrench to get into this one and this one. You're not going to be able to get in there with a socket and ratchet and then do all the rest of them. With a ratchet, get them loose and get this thing out of the way. Now let's back up here just a second, because this being a 75, it did not have a catalytic converter on it. The 75 only didn't, 76 and on would. So if yours is equipped with a converter, just take the flange apart down here, drop it, and then when you take it loose, it all comes out as one unit, leave the converter in place. Now the other thing that was not on this is there's usually a sheet metal box right over here that's part of the heat riser that comes up to the little crab claw on the air cleaner, and there'll be a tab that goes underneath this bolt to hold that in place, the front half of that in place. The back half goes behind it and is held on to this one. That was still in place on this one. So now that we got all this stuff stripped off and we're to this point, now is the time to address any leaking in the side cover gaskets, which is a very common issue. And I would say, unless it is perfectly dry, you should go ahead and get in there and take care of this. But take note that one of the most common reasons for these to leak after replacing them is actually over tightening them. Or that you just don't have like this one lined up right where it's slightly crooked and the gasket can squeeze out or be off center. But we're not going to get into that whole process. I'm just going to go ahead and get in here, clean this up, replace them, and then we'll continue. So before we can actually install anything onto the engine, we actually need to talk about the difference between the thickness of the flanges of different manifolds. So hopefully this will give you a little bit of an idea of not only what manifolds are out there, but also some visual cues as to what you're looking for. Like if you've already got a carb set up like he already had, and you know what thickness the flange is, what you're looking for an exhaust manifold if you don't already have one. Or if you have one, it's not right, what the difference is to find one you do want to get, or how to make up the difference between the two without looking for another one. So we have three different manifolds sitting here now. This would be like the 62 to 67, and this is all US spec stuff here. So it would have an EGR valve on it, and no big vacuum port off the back here. Not the most ideal for this, but you can use this port as a vacuum port for the vacuum booster. It didn't have any real ports here for vacuum for like distributor or anything, but later on in later designs, these were used for that. Like this would be the HS4 manifold. They added this port back here, which could be used as a vacuum port, and they added a port here. Wouldn't have been two originally, would have been just one. The other one would have had a bolt in it. And that would have been vacuum for the anti-run-on valve. And then it would have had a fitting in here for the gulp valve. And then the gulp valve would have actually bolted onto here. And then this is the HIF, where they actually ended up with two vacuum fittings. Now this one's had an extra one put in it for some reason at some point in time. But the second vacuum fitting was for manifold vacuum for the distributor, because they switched from ported vacuum to manifold vacuum. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't think about when doing this swap, is the vacuum source for their distributor. If you're using ported vacuum versus manifold vacuum, then you need to account for that. And we'll get into that more later. So there's a thickness difference. I believe it was in 72, they went to a thinner flange on the manifold. If you were to take a measurement here, this is going to be about 555, 560 range. This is only about 440. And that equates also to the exhaust manifolds. So here's an earlier and later exhaust manifold, and you measure those on this inside flange, not out here. So you get roughly the same 440, 445 range. And, 660, 665, something like that. It depends on the roughness of the casting and everything, but you can see there's a visual difference between them. So if you end up not having an exhaust manifold and you want to go look for the correct manifold to go with the thicker or the thinner flange, you can see that the thicker flange has a step up here. I don't know if how well you can see that there. For the thinner manifold, it's been machined out in a circular pattern here. So if you don't have a good measuring stick with you, that is one thing you can look for. Now the difference between these is roughly 110 to 120 thousandths difference in thickness, depending on the pieces you actually end up with. So you need to make up for it in the clamp bolts or clamp washers that go here. Now I got one here, it's already been modified, so you can do that. One way you can do that, like what I did, was I had these washers here. They are 5/16 by, I think, was it 1 3/4 or 1 or 1 1/4 flat washer. And it just so happens the one I had here is about 55 thousandths. Two of those makes 110 thousandths. That is well within the range of what we want for this to work. But I only had one, or two actually, because I did just one. So I went to the hardware store and got some more. But what you'll find is the thickness of these can vary from batch to batch. So when you go to the hardware store, they might be thicker, might be thinner, and even within the same bit right there in the hardware store, they could be different thicknesses. Like I have some here that's like 60 thousandths and some that are only 50 thousandths. So that can vary a little bit. So what you can do then is, like, I can take this and we can just mark one of these across. You cut these in half and you can stack 150 and 160 to make 110 thousandths. Or like in this case, we got a 55. We can just cut this one in half, stack two of those, weld it onto there, and we got 110 thousandths. That's going to be perfectly fine for what we're going to do here. Now, if you can find these in actually 1/8 inch thick, anywhere from 110 to 125, then you can just cut them in half and use a half of one and either glue or tack weld it onto here to make that. So in our case here, once we put this together, that will make up the difference and clamp these things nice and evenly and do exactly what we want them to do.